Hi, friends, and welcome to the June 23rd, 2023 edition of the Astro Energy Astrology Podcast with me, your astrologer in Orlando, Florida, Shelley Overton. And I want to welcome you. This week, we're going to go over some of the things coming in from astrology. We're going to be going over what's in the sky this week, and we're going to go over the connection between Titanic and Titan really quickly. It's still so fresh. I don't want to show any disrespect. I just am always curious about world events, and I like to research them, try and get a handle on what exactly happened astrologically. And there are a couple things that are quite interesting in the connection between Titanic and Titan. And also, I want to let you know that my setup is different because I'm still in the process of moving. Today is really my actual move. I get the bed set up today, and that means I'm spending the night tonight. So I'm very excited, and I will show you a little bit of it when I get there. But it's right in downtown Orlando, so it's got a really amazing view of a stadium, believe it or not, but it is still quite awesome. We're going to go over a couple different types of charts here with the Titan and the Titanic. So the first one is going to be at the center of the chart, is with the Titanic in the center of the wheel. That creates the horizon. This is the time it first hit the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, 1912. Okay, so it was an 8-degree rising in Aquarius. Out of the gate, you're going to have unusual things happening. Then you have the ruling planet of Aquarius, Uranus, right on the horizon here where the arrow is pointing. Uranus being in the 12th house, that's the house that is ruled by Pisces and water. In modern day iconography, it's Triton in like the Little Mermaid series on Disney films. And he was the equivalent of Neptune, the king of the oceans. So Uranus is in the house of Neptune. It's the unexpected. And he's in the last 5 degrees of that house, meaning it's an end degree getting ready for a new beginning as planets move into the first house. You can see here with the submersible, Pluto went back into Capricorn, which is earth and tangible goods, and connecting down to the material. Not a good energy when you're going diving in the ocean because you are going to go to the bottom. But it is the last degree and within 9 minutes of changing into Aquarius energy. So Pluto had just made connection to Aquarius energy with a connection to Uranus as he was in early Aquarius. And now he went back into Pluto, last degrees, retrograde, which means we're going back to something. So went back to the side of the Titanic, and then Earth energy going down in the ocean, which of course it is in the last 10 degrees of the 12th house. So it's a very solid, grounded energy in that area of the sky. And this is a time for when Titanic hit the iceberg. So again, this is how the submersible interacts with the chart of the Titanic hitting the iceberg. And then the moon, the day the Titanic hit the iceberg at the time, the moon was at 27 degrees Pisces, literally the last 3 degrees of the energy of Pisces, which is the end of a story and the death of something old connected to the water. The moon is also water ruler, the tides, etc. It is deeply emotional in the late degrees of Pisces. And if you listen to the podcast regularly, you'll know that late degree Virgo energy, which answers to Mercury, is kind of an accident energy, the last degrees of Virgo with Mercury, and then also the last degrees of Gemini, because again, answering to the energy of Mercury, which can be accidental energy. Then you have over here on the right side of this chart, Pluto, the time that the iceberg was hit for Titanic is at 27 degrees of Gemini. So you've got the energy of moon at 27 Pisces squaring the energy of Pluto and Gemini to the exact degree. So when we look at a chart in horary astrology, I pronounce it horary because I have French background and the H is silent. So that it's Horary, which means in the moment you understand a question. It's kind of a type of astrology that you can answer questions based on that, based on when the astrologer knows the question. But there is a really good indicator of an outcome in that type of astrology that I actually use in just regular astrology, which is the moon as an indicator of an outcome. And here we see the moon at last degrees of a sign, and it's also square to Pluto, which is major life change. And Pluto does rule the underworld, which the oceans, I think we can all agree, are somewhat connected to that. And Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio, which means that there's an energy of the underworld and what's below the surface. Pluto in Gemini is the intellect, the ideas, and honestly, I've said this before, I think the two signs that probably most associate to the ego and to the energy of just doing stuff without really thinking about consequence. There are three of them. I actually say Sagittarius is a lot in action, that way, not worrying about consequence through action. But Aries is also one of them because it is the energy of the newborn coming in and just needing to get its needs met. So Aries can be very act and then think. And then Gemini is very much an energy of self-interest and doing things based on your own personal desires. So when you have the energy of Neptune in last degrees of Pisces, and then you have the iceberg moment was Venus in Aries, early degrees, Venus answers to the male drive. And then you have the square to Pluto. And then, of course, male drive Mars is square to the energy of Venus at the time the iceberg was hit. So there's a lot of information that's coming through about change and transformation through action. And then also the ending of an old story, Pluto squaring the moon at the time the iceberg was hit, and then Mars squaring Venus, Aries to Cancer. Cancer is home and families, and there were many families on Titanic at that time who lost their lives, and Mars in Cancer is Mars in the water energy. Now, looking at the submersible, the moon, an indicator, was in Gemini within 2 degrees of Pluto for the Titanic, even farther beyond, even closer to changing signs at the time the submersible went on its dive, which is 9:30 a.m. Newfoundland time, June 18th, 2023. So it is set to the coordinates of the dive site because I found that on Wikipedia. And also I use those same coordinates because the Titanic is there as well. So I use those coordinates for the Titanic hitting the iceberg. Now we go over here to Saturn and Uranus within 2 degrees in Taurus. Again, it's the manifestation. It's manifesting in the material world. Uranus at 21 degrees, Saturn ruling Capricorn, ruling materiality, ownership and responsibility and karma within 2 degrees of Uranus. Again, for the Titanic, Uranus rules the event of the Titanic hitting the iceberg. And then over here at 27 degrees, we also have, interestingly, the asteroid Vulcan, which can be very detached. I mean, I basically use the energy of Vulcan associated with Mr. Spock in Star Trek series because he is the embodiment in the material world through entertainment of what the Vulcan energy is associated to. And it is also the theoretical ruler of Virgo. And so it is very androgynous, and it is somewhat associated with Mercury, but Vulcan can also have a material expression of that Mercury energy, in my opinion. And it is rather unemotional and practical and very matter of fact. And also the asteroid Juno, which I find really interesting because Juno was married to Jupiter, was the partner to Jupiter. It is the moon, a moon of Jupiter, but it is also an asteroid. These are different bodies, Juno, the moon, and Juno, the asteroid. This is Juno, the asteroid, but it still takes on the energy of the moon of Jupiter, which is a married partner. And you've got Juno right on Pluto, which indicates that there is some connection, almost like a moon of Titanic or an asteroid of Titanic associated to it is a partnering energy. If you think of Titanic and you think of Jupiter, Jupiter is this enormous planet out in the sky that is 1,000 times the size of Earth. think 250,000 miles around, and it's so hard to fathom. Jupiter is enormous, just like Titanic was enormous in its day. And then Juno is like a satellite entity around that enormous body. So Juno coming in at the exact degree of this event of the iceberg getting hit by Titanic back in its day, exact degree. And Vulcan also, meaning it's kind of an event that happened that is in coordination, but also as a learning process, which is very cold as an emotional energy, but it is part of the energy of that moment in time. Right over here next to Vulcan is the sun in Gemini, which is also an indicator of two. So you have the sun in Gemini, Mercury, accidents in Gemini. You have Pluto in Gemini for Titanic and Juno, and Moon at the last degree of Gemini, indicating a duality of something. And then we have the moon moving on into Cancer just afterwards, which meant that we all kind of felt this emotional bond, along with the moon of Titanic at 27 degrees squaring Pluto in the sky the day it hit the iceberg. And then here with this kind of tanny orange arrow is Neptune at 27 degrees 38 minutes. The moon of Titanic was at 27:33, within 3 minutes of astrological time, hitting that Neptune, the depths of the ocean. So there are a lot of things to unpack about this exact event and connection between the submersible and Titanic. And then you also see here in the chart of the Titanic iceberg chart that Jupiter was in Sagittarius, which is travel. It's its own sign. And so there is an energy in the public eye, in the energy of lasting qualities of that event associated with Jupiter. So Jupiter in Sagittarius means travel, transportation, and travel, as does Gemini. Gemini is more localized, whereas Jupiter is larger, long distance travel. So if you think of that, Jupiter at the day of the Titanic iceberg hit, it was a long distance voyage, but the day that we had the submersible go down, it was more of a localized thing. And I find that really interesting that it was a journey to the bottom of the ocean, which is a shorter distance, 2 miles, more localized energy going on, but yet nonetheless, it still connected the submersible to the Titanic because of the energy of all the Gemini planets really connecting to that Pluto energy. And then Uranus on Saturn, which is a restriction of Titanic to the freedom and the material freedom. So it was, in my opinion, definitely a fated energy, with the Chiron at also Aries, Chiron 19 degrees Aries, Chiron at 21-degree north node of the Titanic, and opposite the south node in Libra, which is a marriage energy. Again, it's the movement of the energy, and there's a lot of male energy going into this and the drive, and I'm just going to do it. And I know there were people on board who were nervous about it, and one person who didn't go because he was concerned about safety. So this, again, to me, this is kind of the male ego just going ahead with things and not looking to the safety, which is really the ultimate lesson, I think, of this, and the cost to human life of not really taking your time and dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So the other chart that I have is the reverse of that. It is the chart of the submersible in the center wheel and the Titanic iceberg hit on the outside wheel. And you see in this chart, again, to the 9:30 a.m. dive time, it was 18 degrees Cancer rising with the moon in the 12th house of endings at 29 degrees Gemini. Again, accidents, endings, under the water, not a time I would have chosen at all if I had done a chart and been asked about this, because it's just an ending. It's also a void of course. It is, nothing will come from it as far as moving forward and getting the information you wanted. and it is a very dangerous degree, anaretic degree. Neptune is 1 degree off of the fame point. Again, grab the attention for hours and hours of television time. Neptune 27 Pisces, 28 degree midheaven. And then you have Jupiter in the North Node connected at the last degrees of the Capricorn house, going into the Aquarius house. Once again, the unexpected. Jupiter, 1st degree of the Aquarius house, and transportation in Taurus, which is the manifestation, the physicality of an event, and bringing it back down to earth. And then we've got over here on the right side, the lower right side in the blue, a square between Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn, karmic, tangible, groundedness, material world. These are physics at play. You get the submersible below that many pounds of pressure of the ocean, and it just couldn't take it. It wasn't built to take it, so it imploded. And then you have a square to the south node, which is karma from past, under the ocean, Scorpio, underworld, square between Pluto and the sign of its rulership, Scorpio. And then you have Jupiter in Sagittarius here with the Titanic energy coming in, right there, kind of at a midpoint between the two, literally the midpoint between the two. So it is kind of clear that there is a very strong connection. You've got Uranus in the Titanic chart on the outside ring at 3 degrees, and then in the house of marriage, connecting Uranus to Pluto in the house of marriage. Neptune on the horizon for the Titanic chart on the outside is within 3 degrees of the rising sign. You can see there was a very strong draw of Titanic for this event. It was like calling it to itself almost. And then you have Mars, the Titanic chart. Mars is in 5 degrees Cancer, again, answering to the moon at 29 Gemini, just after, well, it's not technically after. What happens is the moon's in Gemini and then Mars is in Cancer. In this chart, Cancer falls above the moon, but it's actually technically after, because it's 5 degrees. So it was 6 degrees away from the moon. And yet it's still in water. It's taking action in water, of the Titanic iceberg, connecting to that energy. So it's a lot of interesting energy with this breakdown, and I will try to remember to put it up on Facebook. Like I said, today is the last day of moving. It's going to be difficult to even get this up. I'm probably not going to do as much editing, but that's what we have for the Titanic and Titan energy. And then if we go to what's going on in the sky now, here we have a natural chart with Aries on the horizon, Neptune, 27 degrees Pisces. There is a sextile between Pluto retrograde and Neptune about to go retrograde in Pisces, which means we have the dream. The dream is very much in positive mode with the connection between Neptune and Pluto. It is a life change. It is a positive life change, but that doesn't mean it is without going back and reviewing. And that's what we have. We have Pluto retrograde, not only went back to the early degrees of Aquarius, reviewing where we are initiating new energy, but now where we are wrapping up the old story with Pluto, the deep psychological connections. Really, how do we integrate the emotion, the psychology of the old place that we've just been, the authority energy, the traditional planned out way of looking at the issue that we are dealing with Pluto. It falls right on the cusp of my house of communication, moving into home and family. And so now I'm going back over my communications issues and my thought processes and what is going on with that. And it is a difficult energy for me because I am very much Aquarian influenced person, because I have all my Virgo 4 planets, including Uranus, including Pluto, Sun, and Mercury in the Aquarius house. So I have a very strong connection to Aquarius, and am actually actively looking forward to Pluto being in Aquarius for good. But we're going back into the materiality energy of Pluto and Capricorn, which means we have to address ambition. We have to address what is the structure of our desire for our careers, for our life's purpose. So we have that. And then we have Neptune, which is the emotional life at last degrees of Pisces, wrapping up old stories around older people, older generations, vintage energy, the quality of archival information, archival energies. Are we emotionally processing our life in another plane of existence to get ready for Neptune in Aries, which reinitiates a new story or initiates a new story? I say reinitiate because we've gone through this cycle. We've gone through this cycle many times before. We just don't remember it in our lifetime. In a spiritual mode, we've been through this many, many times as the cycle has gone on for eons. And Neptune gets ready to go back into Aries. It's a 164-year cycle. So it takes 164 years to go all the way around the sun for Neptune. And that means that now we are going back into this energy again in the next few years. It'll take a little while because, again, 164 years is a very slow time. And it's a little longer than a decade to go through each sign. As we look at Neptune in late degrees of Pisces, we really evaluate the ultimate dream and what are the emotions associated with that. Pluto can also be highly emotional because, again, it rules Scorpio, which is an emotional sign. So the two together are really working with the oceans. I mean, it is an incredibly strong energy to look at the oceans, which, of course, we were going to have something to draw our attention to the oceans again as these two met up. Here on this now chart, we also see Pluto in conjunct or quincunx to the energy of Mercury. So over the next week, maybe 8 days, we are going to see Mercury move in difficult alignment to Pluto. And because Mercury rules Gemini, this is going to affect Geminis. And it's also going to affect Virgo. Again, the last 10 degrees, especially the last 5 degrees, are accidents. Gemini is duality, so it means two. So there will be another significant accident coming in, but this one could very potentially be associated with the material world. So earthquakes, volcanoes, Mercury is transportation. So there could be some type of transport that doesn't make it where it's going. And it can also be neighbors. This could also be difficult energy coming in our individual lives around our environment that is going to be affected and changed drastically through the forward momentum of our lives. It's interesting. I had a couple different places I lived where as soon as I moved in, criminals basically were arrested and taken out of it. One place, a man who was allegedly mass murder of prostitutes in Denver lived across from me when I moved into a condo back in the 80s, the late 80s. And then when I moved into a townhome in 2015, I had an alleged rapist, a sexual assault criminal. They had a bunch of like SWAT people. They had the jackets on and guns drawn out my window right next door across the greenway to the other unit. And so here we are again with the energy of actually end degrees of Gemini could be fraud in some respect, as late degrees of Scorpio squaring late degrees of Leo planets is also a similar energy. Pallas Athena is at 22, Mars is at 19 Leo. It is moving forward, so we are going to get this energy again. But there aren't any late Scorpio planets right now other than the moon when it transits. So, okay, let's see. And then finally, we have the opposition of the North Node and the South Node as they get ready in the next few weeks to go into Aries Libra, which means we are feeling the initiating and also ending energy because it's a retrograde motion of the nodes of fate. We are really expressing ourselves in a new way in romance, in money. We are learning the lessons of initiative energy of both signs, Scorpio and Taurus, but it is a major life change energy coming in. And then when they shift into the last degrees of Aries and Libra, it can really show us an old story that needs to be changed also from that aspect because of the Aries energy It is how we express ourselves, and we are learning kind of in retrograde motion how to review the energy of our actions through North Node taking action towards something and South Node bringing in energy from a past life and karma. So it's a really interesting dynamic that maybe we will explore in later episodes. Okay, so real quick, the rest of the week, we do have on the 30th, Neptune moving retrograde. Neptune direct is very dreamy, again, ending of a story, but Neptune retrograde means that we are going to have to review things of the ocean, things of emotion, things of our vision for the future. It is our expression of creativity. And we go from the energy of accepting people at face value, agape love, complete universal acceptance and love, like a mother would love a child in an optimal world, to the energy of really reviewing the truth of a matter, more Virgo energy. It's going to be grounded, it's going to be practical, and we will have the rose-colored glasses come off, especially because Saturn is retrograde in Neptune. Saturn is retrograde in Pisces as well. So it removes that rose-colored illusion that we have, and we will have to get much more practical about what's going on with the ocean energy, with emotions, with the dream. And it will be in positive aspect to Pluto to Neptune. This means that the practicality, the information that we do through research, what is going on below the surface, the practical research has to be done to make our dreams come true and to really put into effect once Pluto goes direct later in the year. I believe it's like the first week of November, or actually the second week of October. Pluto goes direct right around the 10th. And then Neptune doesn't go direct until next year. I will let you know when, but it's January, probably January or late January. And then once we get into that energy, we're also going to have Pluto in Aquarius at that time and moving out of Capricorn energy, except for 2 months at the end of 2024. We are going to really be moving forward much more next year with the Aquarian energy. So lightening ourselves up, getting information coming in very rapidly. Right now with the energy of Jupiter and Taurus, until Jupiter goes into Gemini, which is going to be later, I believe later in the year. No, it'll be 2024. Jupiter goes into Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini is going to be super fast energy, but in Taurus, as long as we have a lot of Taurus planets, right now we have North Node and Jupiter and Uranus, which slows things down incredibly. So when you think, man, it's taking forever to get there, even in traffic lately, I've been noticing very slow traffic, very slow moving forward of energy. And that's all the Taurus energy. Even with Uranus and Taurus, slows it down so we can think about it, we can alter it, we can adjust to it. This is also the energy of currency, cryptocurrency. I would say the time that Jupiter is in Gemini and Uranus gets into Gemini, we will probably be fully in technological currency. It's going to be an interesting time. Anyway, that's all for this week. I really don't have any more time to go over it, and it's still going to be a lot of editing. But I thank you for showing up every week and giving me a little extra time to get this out. Hopefully I can get it out tonight, which is even early, but we'll talk to you soon. I've got a lot of work to do today. And if not, definitely by Saturday this week. Thank you. Take care. Talk to you soon. The Titanic, I'm trying not to make it quite so looking up at the sky. Okay. Neptune.
Hi, this is Shelley. Thank you for joining us this week. To contact me for a private reading, go to angeliczodiac.com under the Readings tab. To purchase my ebook, Learn Astrology, you can find it at angeliczodiac.com. Background music was provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Be sure to check back next week and subscribe through iTunes at Astro Energy Astrology Show.